Hi and welcome to Best in Tesla. So we have been talking about the Chinese are coming before, but they are not really kidding around. NIO and XPeng are already pretty much as big as BMW and Mercedes in terms of how many EVs they sell in a year. They were all just around 100,000 units last year. And that is two new Chinese startup companies that is keeping up with two of the big old German car manufacturers. Very impressive. There is one that has been around since 2003 and is not just keeping up, they have passed them all. Even Volkswagen in terms of BEV sales. And that is BYD, a name the legacy automakers just can't ignore anymore, like they tried to ignore Tesla, because BYD, they are actually all in on EVs. They ditched their ICE car business altogether here in March, and they are growing faster than even Tesla did. They already make their own batteries and chips, and are building a lot of new factories. They are all in. And they have just revealed their new 2022 version of the Han electric car, their luxury sedan, and it is a beast that the old legacy automakers have to take seriously, because it is coming to Europe and it's a bargain. So let's try to compare the BYD Han to some of the legacy's new models like the BMW i4, which is very similar, and why they should worry. Also because of the volume production BYD is actually able to do, which we are still waiting to see from the legacy automakers like BMW. So let's check it all out and let's dive right in. So firstly, who is BYD? Well, they are a little Chinese car company established in 2003, but they don't just make cars, they also make smartphones and batteries and computer chips. And this is all a very good advantage when it comes to growing as an EV company. Because just like Tesla that has just begun making their own batteries as well, BYD has done for years already. Tesla has even bought batteries from BYD. So as I talked about before about Tesla, they're trying to be as much in control of their own destiny as possible because they have made the moves for many years to secure their supply chain. Well, BYD is also taking destiny into their own hands by not only making its own batteries, but BYD is already making its own chips as well. So BYD should be able to handle the chip shortage and battery shortage much better than anyone else. And BYD is not a small battery company. BYD actually beat Panasonic to rank in third place with an 11.9% market share in the global EV battery market for Q1 of 2022. So they are not messing around and is now the third largest EV battery manufacturer in the world. And will this year have a 100 gigawatt-hour battery factory coming online. So just as big as Tesla want their Texas and Berlin factory to become here in the near future, Tesla of course want to scale to 200 to 250 gigawatt hours of production, but 100 gigawatt hours is bigger than most other battery factories from any other battery manufacturer and should be enough for about 1 to 1.5 million EVs depending on the battery size. And most of these batteries are all LFP batteries, so the cheapest kind of batteries, so BYD will not be as hurt because of the high nickel prices, because they mostly use iron cathodes. And just a short note here, just like Tesla and CATL's LFP battery, they use no cobalt, which I still hear people talk about, but as I have mentioned many times before, the oil industry is the one that is using a lot of cobalt, not the battery industry, and eventually the cobalt will go away in the battery industry, as we see with LFP batteries, but will never go away in the oil industry, something the haters seem to be missing, because it takes about 1 pound of cobalt to remove the sulfur from 80,000 gallons of petroleum products like gasoline. But 98.8% of that cobalt can be recovered, meaning we lose about 1 pound of cobalt for every 6.6 million gallons of oil we refine, but still using cobalt, and a lot of it. In the US alone in 2019, about 142 billion gallons of gasoline were used, so about 216 million pounds of cobalt was used to remove sulfur just in the US. So cobalt is not an argument against EVs, it is yet another argument against ICE cars. Just wanted to point that out one more time. So BYD's LFP batteries has a little less range and power, but you can charge them to full, no problem. And BYD's LFP blade batteries have been shown to be very, very safe. You can pierce the batteries and they still won't catch fire. So that is very cool. And BYD has already stopped making ICE cars. They are only making new energy vehicles. Still some hybrids, but they will also be phased out, but no pure ICE vehicles anymore. And BYD already make electric buses and trucks. Year to date, they have sold 1,592 units, up 16%, and they have been doing that for years. Tesla's semi-truck will be a much better electric truck, but BYD is already producing electric trucks. And BYD has a factory being built in Thailand as well for the right-hand driving cars. So they are building a lot of new factories all over. They know the demand is there for EVs, and they have a real shot at becoming one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world. So they are not waiting. They are building many factories at once, making their own batteries and chips, so they are really in a good position and ready to hit the EV revolution straight on. But are they actually producing any meaningful amount of EVs? Yes, they did here in Q1 2022 become the second biggest EV maker just after Tesla, overtaking the entire Volkswagen Group, so Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Skoda, Seat all together. And in Q1 2022, Tesla sold 310,000 BEVs, up 68%, sitting on the number 1 spot as expected. But then the number 2 spot was BYD with 143,000, up 271%, and that is BEVs. They did produce some hybrids, but we don't care about those. And then at third place comes the Volkswagen Group with 99,000 units, up 65%. And just a little side note on Volkswagen's deliveries here, they did deliver 28,000 BEVs in China and has a target of 150,000 BEVs sold in China this year, where someone like BYD almost did that in just Q1. And Tesla sold about 182,000 units in China in Q1. Yes, in China there is Tesla and the Chinese and everyone else. And even though Volkswagen is up 65%, 99,000 BEVs is still lower than the last 3 quarters. And that is okay, since Q1 is the lowest quarter in a year, right? But we don't see this with someone like Tesla or BYD. Their numbers in Q1 is still higher than their Q4 numbers from last year, because they are growing rapidly. Volkswagen still have seasonal swings in their EV sales, which is also a good indicator that they do have problems scaling up as fast as Tesla or the Chinese. Just as Herbert D said last year, that their competition is not Mercedes, BMW, Toyota, it is Tesla and the Chinese. Herbert really gets it, but is stuck in Volkswagen's thick glue of culture, rules, politics and bureaucracy. And if we compare some of the other European car makers that are starting to claim they are the leader in the EV race, like BMW, well, they sold 35,000 BEVs, up 149%, so that's great, and 9,000 of them was the Mini, so not BMW cars, but the BMW Group sold 35,000 BEVs, so about 4 times smaller than BYD, or 9 times smaller than Tesla. So still about the same rate of growth as we have seen from the other EV startups in China, like NIO with 25,000 in Q1 and Xpeng with 35,000, just like BMW. And if both BMW and BYD hits their target, BYD will end off this year being 3 times bigger than BMW in BEV sales volume. 200,000 versus 600,000. That is BYD's target for 2022 in only BEVs. Let's see if even Volkswagen can keep up with that this year. Their Q1 was not so impressive and are already about 50,000 units behind BYD year to date. But most of BYD's sales are of course in China, but in March they did export 1,109 plug-in vehicles, so the beginning of them coming to Europe, Australia, and the rest of Asia, of course, and probably heading for Africa as well. So that is the numbers that is going to be very exciting to see how big that export number will become and how well their electric car will be received here in Europe and even in the US. But in Europe, we already have a lot of different Chinese EV models like the Airways U5 or the MG ZS that I actually see quite often here because some in my neighborhood actually have these cars. And of course, don't forget the Polestar 2. It is also a Chinese car that has been very well received here in Europe, so I think they will be well received. Also because demand for EVs are very high, but legacy automakers can't keep up with the supply. But the Chinese will be more than happy to come in and help with that supply. But are BYD's EVs any good? Well, I have not seen one myself, but For the Charge have made a review of the first of the Han that came out last year, and they were very impressed with the build quality of the car, so the Han should be very well built and feel very luxurious. So before everyone goes off in the comments that the BMW is a much better build quality, it might be, but I don't think it's so much that you would actually notice it as an everyday Joe as me. But the price difference is something you will notice, something you just can't ignore. But I'll get back to that in a second. And the BYD Han 2022 version has just been revealed, and it does come in many versions, so you can get it much cheaper than the one we are comparing here today, because that is very similar to the BMW i4 M50, BMW's flagship EV. So just keep that in mind. But firstly, the looks. Well, that is of course a very personal opinion, so you can make your own judgment on that, but I personally think the Han looks pretty good. The back end has especially been given a big upgrade compared to last year's version, but I think both cars are good looking cars. I'm not a big fan of the nostrils of the BMW, but other than that, it's a fine looking car. But the BYD does have pop out handles just like the Tesla Model S, so that is kind of nice, where the BMW just have normal old handles. And the BYD will of course come with BYD's own Blade LFP battery technology that is very safe and no problem charging it to 100% every time. So that is of course a nice little extra feature with this car over the BMW, which uses nickel batteries. But let's check out the specs here. So the Han does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.7 seconds, not bad. And the i4 does it in 3.9 seconds, not bad either, but still slower than the Han. And the range of the Han is 610 kilometers CLTC. Yes, another measurement coming out of China, so maybe about 550 kilometers of WLTP, where the BMW has a 560 kilometers CLTC or 510 kilometers WLTP. So another win for the Han, but both have a top speed of 190 kilometers an hour. The Han can charge from 30 to 80% in 30 minutes. The only number other than that I have been able to find was 150 kilometers CLTC in 10 minutes. So about 130, 140 kilometers in 10 minutes, where the BMW has a charging speed of 200 kilowatts, and they say it gets 120 kilometers in 10 minutes for the M50. But I have seen 140 kilometers in 10 minutes also on the BMW sides, but no matter what, they are very similar in charging speed. So when it comes to specs, they are very similar, but the Han does have an advantage over the BMW in both acceleration and range, but it is very close. One thing that is not very close that is the price. You can buy both of these cars in China right now, and the BYD Han with these specs is 330,000 Chinese yen, or about $51,000. The BMW is 540,000 Chinese yen, so that is about $82,000 US. So you will save about $30,000 with the Han compared to the BMW with similar specs. That is just nuts, and not very good for the BMW i4 sales in China. And with the Han, you do get this big, beautiful screen that can actually rotate. So if you prefer horizontal or vertical, well, you decide yourself. Where the BMW has this little flat screen that is not very good for entertainment when you're charging or just waiting, like with the Han or Tesla for that matter. I use this feature all the time, especially for my kids when we're waiting, not just for charging, but just anytime we're waiting. This is just such a big luxury to have as a family man that you won't get with the BMW, and you can't get a bigger screen over the air, right? So in my opinion, this already makes the BMW a little outdated. I would personally prefer the Han over the i4. The big screen is just a must in my car, and I prefer my cars without old nostrils of the ICE car, which the BMW unfortunately has made their trademark. Just not my cup of tea. So I am a European, and if I should try something else than a Tesla at some point, I would not really care if it's called BMW or BYD or whatever. I just want the car where I get the most out of. And if I can do that and save $20,000 to $30,000 with the BYD Han, well, it would definitely be a strong contender. I would anyway choose the BYD Han over the BMW i4, so I do think the old legacy automakers need to up their game and take some notes from the Chinese automakers like BYD that has ditched all their ICE cars altogether and are now all in, truly all in on growing their EV business as fast as humanly possible to become a big player in the future of the car market, and that is EVs. That is all that matters. It does not matter how big you are today in ICE sales, because that is not going to be part of that future, but it does matter in how easily the transition will be, because it is of course easier for BYD to stop selling ICE cars than for BMW, because they don't make as many ICE cars as BMW does, but BYD has also been phasing them out for many years. So, if the old guys are not working with a sense of urgency, they will get left behind, like we are seeing playing out right now, as little BYD has become a bigger EV manufacturer than even the entire Volkswagen Group, that is trying the hardest to become a big player in the EV race. And the old guys will have to settle for whatever market share is left when the dust has settled after the war for the EV market share, where Tesla and the Chinese is full throttle to the finish line. And in my humble opinion, Legacy have about 5 or maybe 8 years left to do so, or Tesla and the Chinese will have taken the rest of the car market. Just look at this trend in the UK right now on this chart, as I have shown before, but the 50% market share has been pushed out 1 year, so it now looks like 2024 and not 2023. But to think we will be at only 50% in 2030, as most legacy autos are hoping for and have a target for, that is just wishful thinking. And if that is their target, they will become 50% smaller if they are even still alive at that point, because their business looks like it is shrinking a lot and bringing in less money, but their debt continues to grow. To be clear, I'm not rooting for these guys to go out of business, but just trying to test slap them awake. For them to come out of the paradigm paralysis and see what is really going on. And what is going on? The Chinese have a big opportunity to finally become a big player here in the car industry. And Tesla is very, very fast becoming a really big boy as well. So wake up, Legacy. Wake up. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.